Hello. I still have my white hoodie on, but I don't have the hoodie up today. It's down. Wow. So when I started the podcast, Law of Attraction Explored, one of the first teachers that I discussed, maybe the first teacher, I feel like the first teacher I really went into detail about was good old Joey Murphy, aka Joseph Murphy, prominent author of The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, as well as many other underrated works that don't get mentioned nearly as much as The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. But The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, as I've often said, really covers so many of the wonderful concepts and parameters of what we consider to be the law of attraction. And Murphy gives so many terrific examples of how to utilize these concepts. That it's just a very practical, powerful book. It's also a very spiritual book. It's just a whole enchilada. It's a heck of a book. Recently we've been going over some of these helpful pointers in regards to relationships, in regards to, having a healthier relationship, not only with other people, but with yourself. And, the power of your subconscious mind, what it seems to always come back to is that golden rule that how you're treating other people is really directly related to how you are treating yourself. How you are treating yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, gosh, I started the podcast just about a year ago. I think a little bit over a year ago. There's 85 plus episodes. Generally speaking, the episodes are better than these videos. You should definitely listen to the podcast if you have not done that. But I do feel some kind of full circle element because I do feel kind of compelled to talk about Joseph Murphy on this YouTube channel. Recently I have, and I feel compelled to talk about him, what he talks about in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind a little bit more. I don't think that's going to be through just reading helpful pointers, though. I think I'm going to read other excerpts from the book that I find relevant during a given time. This YouTube channel is super informal, so I might completely change my mind. We might not talk about Joseph Murphy again for 6 months after this. Who knows? But something that I want to talk about today briefly is related to what we've been discussing about relationships and about self-love. So, SP stuff, specific person stuff, it always boils back to you, boils down back to you, and as I always say, you are the specific person you're looking for. You are the special person. It's not that other person. The other person, your ideal, is you yourself reflected, at least on this mental, energetic level of how we think psychologically. And Murphy talks about this, about how, your partner is a mirror of you emotionally, energetically, psychologically. He talks about this a lot in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. In the pointers that we went over, he talks about it pretty directly, but really the book is just strewn with all these interesting facets of and examples of him discussing this topic. For instance, we have chapter 17, which comes right after the previous chapter, which is about harmonious relationships. And chapter 17 is called How to Use Your Subconscious Mind for Forgiveness. Now, forgiveness does not just mean forgiving other people, as you probably know. It really means, forgiving yourself, and we find if we do forgive ourselves, that we then are able to forgive other people far more easily. So this probably seems like common sense, but it's worth mentioning. It's definitely worth mentioning, The beginning of this chapter, and I'm not going to read this whole chapter, I don't think, and I'm not going to go over pointers, I don't even think, from this chapter, because I just looked at the pointers, and, this is what I want to convey from this chapter. Murphy writes, life plays no favorites. God is life, and this life principle is flowing through you this moment. God loves to express himself as harmony, peace, beauty, joy, and abundance through you. This is called the will of God, or the tendency of life. There's another part of this book where Murphy says, life, God, life is life-giving. In other words, there is this compulsion to survive and strive that we all have within us. It's, I would argue, like a physiological inherent part of our nature. And so life is life-giving, Murphy says it's not like you get a cut and it doesn't heal itself. You get a cut and it heals itself very quickly. Murphy writes, if you set up resistance in your mind to the flow of life through you, this emotional congestion will get snarled up in your subconscious mind and cause all kinds of negative conditions. God has nothing to do with unhappy or chaotic conditions in the world. All these conditions are brought about by man's negative and destructive thinking. Therefore, it is silly to blame God for your trouble or sickness. Now, perhaps we can argue, well, there's problems, it's not my fault, blah, blah, blah. I get that. Big picture, I guess you could argue against what Murphy just said in the last paragraph. But on a pragmatic, psychological level, dealing with your life, which is what we are interested in exploring in this channel, you have to take responsibility for the resistance that comes up. You have to take responsibility for that if you want to see your life improve dramatically. You can't just blame others, blame the world, blame outer conditions all the time, and not take responsibility for your own psychological behavior. And not just your psychological behavior towards other people, but your psychological behavior, your reactions towards yourself. How are you reacting to your thoughts? How are you reacting to your judgments? What are you accepting? What kind of suggestions are you making to yourself each day? And what kind of negative suggestions that you're making to yourself, because we all make negative suggestions to ourselves. What kind of negative suggestions are you accepting and continuously accepting? Because that's affecting your life negatively. When we accept a lot of negativity, self-suggest a lot of negativity, it negatively affects our life. And if we can replace that negativity with positivity, life-giving force, which is actually like a natural thing. God is life-giving. If we can become more appreciative of this natural sense of life and joy and wonder, Murphy said, harmony, peace, beauty, joy, and abundance. If we can tap into that natural inherent part of us, which we all have, and accept that instead of these negative self-suggestions, our life is going to get better. So, it can seem very, very hard to separate ourselves from our self-suggestions. And that's why we do this work, is to become better at separating ourselves from these negative self-suggestions that we bombard ourselves with throughout the day. And things like, being playful, jumping up and down, talking out loud to ourselves, tapping into how we feel and recognizing that the feeling that we're feeling is just something that's momentarily there, and we don't have to associate it with particular things that we're thinking. In other words, like the letting go process. Doing that, just simply actively affirming positive things as opposed to affirming negative things unconsciously. These are all ways to separate ourselves from our negative self-suggestions and realize that we do not have to accept them blindly, and that there's a better way, that we can become more in tune and aligned with the abundance that we already are if we let it into our life and forgive ourselves for our past sins meaning missing the mark of not recognizing this abundance, and see that we have what we want on a deep level. This peace and joy is here, and we can access it, and that there's nothing wrong with suggesting that we can access it and separating ourselves from those suggestions saying that we can't access it. I feel like this video sounds too esoteric, but that's fine. Sometimes my videos are going to sound esoteric. The next Murphy video I make is not going to sound as esoteric, and I'm sure that a lot of you understood what I was just saying. I want to just read again. God is life, and this life principle is flowing through you this moment. This very moment it's flowing through you. God loves to express himself as harmony, peace, beauty, joy, and abundance through you. You know, if you don't want to use the term God, you could just say life. Life loves to express itself through you in harmony and peace and beauty and joy, in abundance. That's the life-giving principle that we operate with. It's just there. If you've experienced that and are consciously noticed it, you know what I'm talking about. We've all experienced this life-giving principle. We experience it every day. It's what helps us heal when something traumatic happens, when something bad happens. If we tap into that more, things get better. Plain and simple. So I hope this wasn't too unclear.